Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone. I'm Sean and you're watching RennEleven on Instagram Live. Today we are going to be chatting to the wonderful Eric Pasia from Last Era. Wow, literally just had a huge inundation of people, so it's great to see you. Hello, Mr. Mulder. Thank you very much for turning up. Thank you, everyone. Wow, there's a fair few of you coming up. Cool. Nice to see you, Dunk. Leo, how you doing, my friend? Oh, it's good. Good to see all of you. So what I'm doing now is just waiting to see when Eric turns up. So he's obviously being fashionably late. No, he's not. He is just here. So without much further ado, he's just sent a request. I will access that. A couple of things of note for you, though, first of all. Live Q&A, so we're going to be asking some questions. I also want you folks to make sure you have got some great questions lined up for Eric as well. So please type them in and we'll have an opportunity to sort through them now. Whilst we wait, make sure you get yourselves a bevy, because guess what I'm about to do now? Can't be doing a live chat without having some form of alcoholic refreshment. A bit of Rattler. If you know your ciders, it's the best cider going. So there you go. Okay, thank you very much, Eric. Seen the request. Any second now. Oh, we've got Women in Porsche UK as well joining. Thank you so much.
Sean,
hello.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
Good. What's going on?
It's all good, my friend. All good. Can you believe it? We are now live on Instagram, and you are the first interview that I'm going to be conducting on it.
I know. I appreciate it. How's the connection? Is it okay? Is it blurry or is it clear? No,
you look beautiful, my friend. I can see. I love the setting as well. It looks like you're in a pre-made studio with the Last Era stuff on there.
Yeah. I'm just sitting in my garage. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon in Arizona. It's a little warm today, but yeah, man, it's the only place I can find in my house where I know I won't get distracted by my kids or my wife. So
it's a good place to hide out, man. I'm wearing my Last Era tee as well, so there you go.
Nice, very cool, man. Yes, I've been wearing my RennEleven tee pretty often. I know you've probably seen me tag you in those photos, but yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the support as always.
Cool. And it looks like everyone can hear everything too. Everyone's saying they can hear us, and that is brilliant. Okay. So a couple of things. What we're going to be doing today is obviously it's going to be a live Q&A. So there's going to be some questions coming from other people as well, which is wonderful. I've also got some questions because, you know, you are one of my first followers and also someone I kind of look up to within this scene, because you're kind of self-made. You've done all this yourself. You do everything yourself from you know your printing and your creation. So it's kind of like you really are a master of all trades. I've also got a quick fire round of questions, which
nice. Yeah.
Well,
let's do it, man.
You must take them in jest. That's all I'll say. And everyone who's listening, take it in jest as well, because some of the things you're going to hear. There's some questions that's going to make you wince, but it's all cool. It's family friendly as well. So, because I appreciate different time zones. Okay. So, Eric, tell us a bit about yourself, because we know you as Last Era brand. Tell us about Last Era and what is it all about? Yeah.
So, God, what has it been? Two years now, a little over 2 years since I started Last Era brand. And, you know, I'm in my 40s, so I'm a little older. And I decided as a 40-something-year-old, why not try to do something interesting and cool and entrepreneurial. I spent most of my career in corporate America, so I was like, you know what, I have an itch, right? I have a creative itch that I need to scratch, that I've been looking to try to do for many, many years since I was, you know, maybe graduated from high school or college. And I just never got the confidence to be able to kind of go off and make an idea like that into reality. And so when I turned 40, and I spent a weekend out at Luft, I think it's Luft 5. And I walked around. It was my first Luft, a Porsche air-cooled show in California. And I saw how cool the community was in terms of just the Porsche community outside of where I live in Arizona. And I always knew it was a big community, and it was a passionate community. But then I also got inspired by the fact that everyone was very kind of, personable and approachable. And so I started thinking about things that I would do differently if I was going to create something like a t-shirt brand or a clothing brand that was based on something. And I always loved motorsports since I was a kid. Formula One, Indy 500, stuff that was popular in America, but also stuff that was popular all over the world, like Group B rally racing, etc. And I said, why don't I create something that kind of is nostalgic, but also it taps into kind of the connection that we all have all over the world for our love of some of these motorsports. So I decided, why not create something like Last Era brand, but with the focus on kind of curating all of that into cool apparel that I would wear or that my kids would wear, right?
Yes.
And so that's kind of how it all started. I started writing on a napkin one night after Loot 5 and drawing different logos and coming up with different names. And it took me about 2 weeks to come up with this name, this brand logo. And then from there, I just kind of took off. So that's kind of how it all started, man.
That's a lot to unbox. So we've got plenty of opportunity there to sort of dig deep. So why Last Era? I mean, a lot of your things, your designs are focused on those great racing sort of histories from the 80s and whatnot. The stuff that, I mean, I'm in my late 30s, so I'm not far behind you. I did not peg you to someone in your 40s, mate. So whatever elixir you're having, I need some of that as well. But what made you think Last Era this is going to work?
Oh God, it was just tough. I was going through a lot of different ideas on names. I just picked up this 1995 Carrera behind me, and at that time I was thinking about, well, I had owned a water-cooled Porsche in the past. I had a 996, as you know.
Yes.
996 Brotherhood. Shout out to the 996 Brotherhood.
Proper 911, that. Don't forget it.
Yes. So it was my first 911, and it was water-cooled, and I loved it, and it was just an amazing experience with the car and the people that I met. And then a lot of people were like, well, you need to buy an air-cooled car. You need to own an air-cooled car. You need to drive an air-cooled car. At that point, I'd never driven an air-cooled car. And so I decided that my next car was going to be air-cooled, and it took me a little while to find it. And when I found it and started kind of learning a little bit more about that world, it got me thinking about why I liked old stuff, old cars, old motorsports, stuff that I grew up with. And so it was really after I bought this 911 that I decided, that era, and the 993 happens to be the last era of air-cooled. So I was like, okay, well, that sounds pretty neat. And then I started kind of drawing designs on napkins, like I said, and I came up with my first T-shirt. It was a prototype shirt that had my car on the front of it, and it was a terrible shirt. It was a terrible design. I never launched it, but it was my first shirt, and I put this car on the front of it. And I said, okay, that's decent, but probably nobody would want to buy that shirt because first of all, it's my car, and second of all, it was a really bad design. But I kind of just took it from there, and I decided that I wanted to really kind of dive into it. And as I was looking into the different eras of racing from the 80s and 90s, because that's kind of what we're focused on, 80s and 90s racing. Although I do love motorsports from the 70s and the 60s and even kind of contemporary stuff. But when I decided to do that, I really kind of dove into 80s and 90s. And so it was because of this car, a lot of what I'm doing now is because of after I picked up an air-cooled Porsche, which is kind of how I came up with the name.
Yeah, I get that now.
I think someone made a comment about a year ago, my Porsche 911 last year was also related to a last train that he realised at 40 must jump in and not to end up in the corporate life. Someone you know clearly who knows you a lot better than I do.
Yeah, man. I mean, I still have a day job, which is it keeps me busy from 9 to 5, but my creative side of my brain comes alive in the wee hours of the night. So that's when I do a lot of the work around Last Era, and so it just fuels that kind of creative side of me that I've been wanting to do for so long. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've met people like you all over the world, and it's just really cool to see that people are just as interested as I am about this stuff.
I hear you. I think the Porsche community at large tends to be like us, welcoming and willing to sort of just be cool, you know, because hey, you have the same affliction that I do. We may as well share it. It's like you know, a good, probably the worst thing to mention now, but a good disease to pass on to people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, that sort of love and admiration for the cars, and it comes naturally with the people. They seem to attract the right people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and that's what I think surprises me the most. I mean, cars in general, just like the Arizona. I live in Phoenix, right? So we have a pretty healthy Porsche community here, car community. We're not too far from the West Coast, so we get to go to those events like Monterey Car Week and Luft and everything like that.
Yeah, man.
There's some awesome racetracks not too far away, right? So you know, there's always a connectivity and a community, but the thing that really surprises me is that people in Asia and people in Spain and UK, people in Hawaii and South America, I've connected with them just through this kind of interest. And it's funny to see what people are most interested in from that era, right? So is it Formula One era with Senna and Prost or Lauda, you know, that stuff that people really like, or is it this Group B stuff? And there's so many different groups of enthusiasts that I've been able to connect with. And it's just cool to hear some of these stories. And I didn't grow up with the luxury of being able to be a kid that went to the racetrack with my parents or my dad to see all this stuff in person growing up. So I had to see it on TV. But when you meet somebody who's actually was there at that race, saw that car when it was racing, remembers all of that stuff, to me, that's the coolest thing.
The passion kind of exudes, doesn't it? It just gets thrown at you like, okay, I like this.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, like that's cool. And just to tap into that because they saw a shirt or a hat or an Instagram post, I think is probably the coolest thing.
I love actually looking at your last year Instagram, the stories that you come up with, and some of the old school pictures and whatnot. It sort of harks back to the time. And let's actually touch upon that, because the 80s and the 90s were perhaps the most technologically advanced period in motor racing. You know, when you consider the materials, the fact turbo became a real mainstay, especially in Formula One. And then Group B, obviously, that kind of really pushed the envelope when it came to the race tech as well. And you see how powerful these cars were, being sent very quickly down horrible country lanes and racetracks all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, there's so much advancement in the 80s, and because there's a lot of people that were kind of trying different things, right? Have you ever seen the Netflix documentary called One?
No, I haven't actually.
Check it out. Okay. And if there's anybody that's on the live that's seen it, there is this really cool kind of early history of Formula One and how dangerous it was, and how people, race car drivers and teams of people would just show up at the track and just kind of, they'd get ready in the pits and really kind of tool their cars for the track that day. And then they would just jump in and go, right? And the way that started in Formula One and how it built up into kind of the 80s, where there was so much innovation, to your point, around like the materials that they were using, the aero, even though it was more mechanical, grip type stuff, just the way that they were coming up with innovation around like suspension and steering and all that stuff.
The Williams.
Engines.
Yeah.
Williams, yeah.
That balancing thing. What was it, 92? And then you had Prost. No, it was Nigel Mansell and then Prost as well, wasn't it? Their cars were unstoppable, you know.
Unstoppable, and you know those days of Formula One racing or racing in general. A lot of the innovation and the technology that was created during that period of time, I think it really transformed and made the leap from the 70s, the late 70s to the 80s and 90s that much more enjoyable to watch from a motorsport perspective, right? Because it was more competitive. They were coming up with better cars, right? Faster cars, not necessarily bigger cars. You know, I feel like the Formula One cars now, they're so much bigger, longer. In the Formula One cars from back then, that when you're watching like a race at Monaco, they're humongous, right?
Exactly.
And it's crazy. It's just looking at like an old 911 next to a 991.
Yes, exactly. It's
Right.
that's sort of like a Russian doll. It's funny. The Russian just appeared. Alan Shapiro, bless him. Hello, mate. And it's like Russian dolls, right? You've got the small one, and you can actually fit. Imagine how many like Formula One cars you could actually fit into the current sort of Formula One cars these days, because they're so big.
It's so big, and it's crazy. Did you see the Lewis Hamilton? It was a couple years ago. The Top Gear video where he drove Senna's MP4
Yes.
around at Silverstone.
Yeah.
And he was just talking about how different, because you're sitting almost a little bit more upright. You got the gearbox, and there's no aerodynamic grip. It's all mechanical grip. And he was kind of just talking about how different a modern driver like him would have been, how it would have felt if he was driving an old car like that. It's just a completely different era of drivers too, right?
Yeah, definitely. Just one moment, I'm going to go back to everyone. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined, for everyone who's watching. Please keep your questions coming back. We're going to be visiting them very, very soon. So fire them away, and I'll scroll through, and I'll ensure that you guys get a say in with any of your questions. Any sort of opinion questions would be great as well. So thank you. So let's go back a bit. History of Eric, right? And go back to the start of your car journey. So what were you really messing about in back in the day? What sort of stuff were you playing around with?
Yeah, my first car was a 1984 Toyota Celica, handed down by my dad when I was in high school. So I learned to drive. I think most people in Europe and in the UK learn to drive on a manual transmission anyway. We don't typically do that here in the US, and so I learned how to drive on my dad's 84 Toyota. Yeah, it was my first car.
Cool.
And
it's a cool car to drive in the Celica.
I always thought it was cool, you know, as a kid growing up, because he did have, you know, he would take me to this local aftermarket parts shop, not too far from my house, and he would buy a couple of different modifications for it, you know, things like steering wheels and you know, like louvers and just minor things, right? Just stuff to make it look a little bit different. And so he was a little bit of a modifier himself, but I grew up in kind of that early 95, 96. That's when I started driving. And so it was before Fast and Furious. But it was kind of in the era of this kind of these magazines that were called Turbo Magazine, was in the US, Super Street eventually. So I grew up kind of then JDM tuner kind of world. And my first car after the 84 Celica was the 92 Prelude.
Oh, wicked.
Honda.
Yeah.
And so I had a Honda.
I still have the pop-up headlights.
No, it was after that. It had the, had the digital dash.
Oh, that dash was amazing. Yes.
Do you remember that car?
Yeah,
It was kind of advanced. It was different because it had that weird dash.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember when I got that car, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do something to this car. And this was before anybody was doing anything to their Hondas. And so I went on a magazine and I ordered a set of, it was either H&R or Eibach lowering springs, right? I took it, I got it, I ordered it. It took weeks and weeks to get. I finally got them in the mail. I didn't know what I was doing. I took it to a local car shop, and I had them install it. And I was running around with a lowered Honda Prelude 1992. And then from there, I just started modifying JDM cars. So after that, I had a Integra GSR, which I was modifying. That's during the Fast and Furious era. Yeah. And then after that, I kind of moved from JDM and I started to get into European cars. And so I had a 97 E36 M3 that I had, and that was really fun. Modified that quite a bit. I learned a lot about BMWs and my love for, I have this passion for BMWs since I was a kid. So that was my first BMW. And then I've had a E46 M3 after that. So I went from M3 to M3, manual. That was back in 2001. Modified that a little bit. I couldn't afford parts for that car, so I didn't really spend a lot of time and money. I spent too much money buying the car that I had no money to modify the car.
You reach that point when you start buying cars that price, so even if they're used, like approved used or secondhand, whatever, the sort of the money that you need to kind of play with them, you start going into the big leagues, even though the buy-in was probably a lot cheaper than what it would have been brand new. So I hear you.
Totally. I remember the reason I bought that car. I couldn't afford it, right? Like I bought this car. It was like my first job out of college. I was making decent money, and the car payments, and I had a house or a townhouse. And I remember I bought that car because I saw a video of Top Gear when Tiff Needell reviewed the E46 M3. I think it was the blue one, Laguna Seca blue, E46 M3, and I said I have to have that car, right? And so I eventually was able to get one. Couldn't modify to spend any money on it, so I had it for a little while. And then for that period of time, I did BMW for a while. I had an E60 M5 V10. You
guys got the manual, didn't you? Because we
had a manual in the US, but I had the SMG one. Still a cool car, amazing motor.
Yeah.
And then I had Audi for a little while, had some S4s, and then I jumped to Porsche. So that's kind of the history, JDM to Euro, but I still love JDM cars. I mean, it's kind of my original love, but yeah, man.
What do you think there is because I mean, I'm ex-Honda myself. I've had Integra Type Rs and CRXs and stuff.
Oh, you had a Type R. I couldn't afford a Type R. I always wanted a Type R. I think
GSR was still very, very cool, man. So I was lucky to have a JDM 98 spec DC2 in Championship White.
Was white?
Yeah, of course, man. Or Championship Beige, isn't it?
You're gonna have to show me a picture of that. I didn't know you had that car.
Yeah, see, but this is the thing. I've met a few Porsche people who've come from BMW.
Yeah.
Or your Volkswagens, but there's quite a strong contingent that come from the JDM life or the Honda life. So would you say that there's a correlation between fast Hondas and Porsches?
Yeah, I think, I know a lot of people just in the West Coast, right? Because I'm close to California. A lot of the similar stories, not the same stories, right? Grew up in JDM. And for me, it's about like, you just like cars, right? Like at the time, that's what we could afford. And so we messed around with that stuff. And, if I had some extra cash, I'd buy a Type R right now if I could, or an NSX, right? Or a GTR.
Yes.
Because I love that stuff. It doesn't matter to me that it was, it was at that period of my life, and now I'm driving, this. But yeah, there definitely is. I think when you're a car guy and you're just tuning stuff, you just like to tinker. I think you'll tinker whatever you got, right?
Through that.
Whatever you have.
Through that. Okay, so going back, because I guess this is my interview style. I kind of go backwards, way back. I like a Quentin Tarantino narrative. You see, jumping in between times. Your work with Last Era, you do a lot of the printing and the designs yourself. How have you managed to learn design? Is it something you do in your daily job, or is it something that you're like, I need to learn this, or I want to learn this, and how did you go about it?
Yeah, I'm not a designer by trade, and I will never claim to be a designer. There's so many talented people out there that actually, create awesome and amazing art. And, I would never claim to be that. But I started I just have an eye for design, I think. It's one of those things where you kind of see what you like, and then you take an idea and you kind of just, make it your own, you tweak it, or you create an idea that's all your own based on the things that you've learned or kind of observed. I like to look at architecture a lot. I like to look at design in general. I look at any object and they'll say, okay, that thing was designed by somebody for a reason, whether it be functional or to elicit some sort of like reaction or experience when somebody's interacting with it. And so when I look at stuff, I look at the design of something, as simple as a key or as complex as a piece of technology, right?
Yes.
And so when I look at my process for, when I come up with an idea, I kind of just I go back and I look at I do research on that particular era of car, the people that were the race car drivers that were maybe from that period of time, and then I try to pick up on stories, right? Their stories, like kind of like what you're doing right now. I want to know what makes it unique and what the story was about that individual driver, that car, that period of racing, etc. And that's what gets my process going, right? I start to get creative about, what does that mean for people? And so when I create a t-shirt or a design like this Group B one, it's very simple. I have a very minimalist kind of eye towards things. It's really about like, okay, well, what does it represent for people? And why would you want to wear it? Like, there is so many t-shirts out there that say Group B. You could buy it on the internet. It's not a big deal. But for me, the reason why I put stuff on my I put it on and I wear it or I represent it is because it means something to somebody or it means something to me.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the why behind something is the reason at the start, the part of the process that I kind of really focus on. And then after I get that done, I start to doodle on pieces of paper, right? And just kind of sketch things out. And so I still kind of go old school like that, and on napkin, on paper, and just kind of doodle. And once I have something I kind of think is kind of cool, I go into Adobe Illustrator, and I start to kind of create, right? And it takes me hours and hours of time. And then if you'll notice, if you're on my Instagram a lot, or if anybody on your live has ever is following me, you'll notice that I post a lot of stuff on Instagram, and I say, okay, what do you think of that? What do you guys think of this design? And that's the other part of the process, is that I want to ask you guys what you think.
I had a hand in that design, didn't I? I remember.
Yes,
you put
you
it up. And
you did. This design right here. You asked me about it.
And I remember said, drop the words, just keep it Group B. Everyone will know.
Exactly. And see, that's what I mean. And for me, it's like I'm learning to do it because this is not my trade. And so I need the feedback, right? I need to hear from enthusiasts like you, what you like and what you don't like. And I think that's part of what makes it cool for me, at least. When I put something out, it's hopefully something that everybody had some input into.
Exactly. It feels it's a challenge, isn't it? If you're a creative and you naturally you kind of want to put your idea out and everyone love it. Naturally, it's a standard thing. I was the same with RennEleven when I started that a year ago, and when you have an idea and you put it out there, so you want people to like it. But having that idea, putting it out there, and then saying, "What's your opinion of it?" Because I'm malleable enough to change that. Do you feel like is it something you've had to develop, that level of courage, that level of I suppose, courage, for want of a better term.
Yeah, I think part of it is like, okay, well, as a creative, you could be the type of creative that doesn't take feedback well, and start maybe be defensive about criticism or feedback, depending on how you take it, how you look at it.
Sure.
But I'll admit, I don't know how to do any of this shit. Like, I wrote it on a piece of paper on a napkin. I printed it on a t-shirt. I decided to sew shit, learn how to sew, because I just wanted to know how it worked, because I didn't want to get ripped off if I was going to ask somebody to sew something for me. Right. I learned Adobe. I'm learning, and then I'm asking the questions. So if people think I know what I'm doing or I figured it out, you guys, that is not the case, right? That is so far from the truth. So part of it is, kind of just being open about the fact that, I'm learning, right? like you with RennEleven. I love the fact that you've gone out there and you're out there all the time. You're pounding the pavement. You're going to events. You're asking people what they like, and then you're kind of adjusting how you're delivering the message and sharing the ideas in the community.
Yeah.
And that is kind of how I I gravitate towards people who do stuff like that, right? Because that's similar to kind of how I see it. So I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm learning. I hope that this is a long game, right? So whatever I figure out and I fuck up now, I can capitalize on that later. And then the other part of it is like, I hope other people want to help join, support me, and be part of this. So I know one person can't do it. So collaboration, having other enthusiasts out there that are passionate about this stuff that want to help. That's the other thing that I'm trying to pivot towards, because I've been doing everything kind of on my own. So I'm trying to open it up a little bit more now.
Well, I remember saying to you a long time ago that we've got to we've got to do something together. So we've got to do a RennEleven last era collab, and it's got to be something from the 80s. I'm a child of the 80s, so we've got to do something crazy Porsche 80s. It will happen.
Yeah, I was looking through your Instagram feed about the question that you asked around the playlist of people with songs people are listening to, and that you're going to put that together. A lot of that stuff was like 80s and 90s stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
I literally went back in time today, building it up. I was listening to it going, I've not heard this in years. It was a Bon Jovi track someone put on. I was like, wow, this is old. But do you know what? I'm thinking about it, and I'm picturing myself in the car, window down, hooning it, and just thinking, yeah, I can dig it, So it's a very eclectic mix, by the way. It's some weird stuff thrown in there, but it's going to be good.
But it's good, man. You're going to have to come up with a couple of different mixed playlists for that. I'm excited to get it.
Okay. Well, what we're going to do now, I'm going to open up the questions to everyone. So there's been a lot of people commenting and stuff, so I'm going to scroll.
Yeah, man, I haven't been able to read.
No, it's
What's
cool, man. Loads of people saying hello. There was one that was about 996s. Now, here we go. From High252003, what's the cheapest performance mod I can do on my 996? Now, you've had a 996 prior to me. I've got an opinion on it, but I want to hear yours first.
Well, I'm speaking from, and it's probably all the same. So just the 996 platform in general, right? So the question is, what's the cheapest, or what's one of the kind of best bang for your buck performance mods? Is that the question?
I think so. Yeah, cheapest performance mod. That's the top line.
So I'll tell you. So when I built my 996, I spent 2.5 to 3 years building it, and one of the things that first comes to mind that I changed right off the bat was my shifter. I don't know how you feel about your shifter in your car, Sean, but I always felt it was in the 996. It was a little long and sloppy.
First gear's a dick. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. When it's cold, that car does not want to put in. It's like, reverse gear in the 5-speed Honda gearbox from the B series engines. That was shit. I hated it. Trying to put it into reverse, like, that ain't working. Put it in the first, then, now it works. It's stupid, but it's an ism, I thought. So,
do you have an aftermarket shifter in your 996, or do you?
Not yet.
You still with the OEM one? Yeah. So it's, if you take apart your shifter, you'll know it's all plastic, right? Which is interesting, and not at the same time. I'm sure Porsche had a good reason for that. So one of the first things that I liked that I did was change the shifter. So there's a whole shifter assembly that's the brand I bought was called Numeric Shifter. It was all made out of billet aluminum or billet, some sort of metal.
Nice.
And then and since we have cables that attach to the transmission via the shift mechanism, if you get the motorsport cables with an aftermarket shifter like a Numeric shifter, it completely transforms the driving experience, right? And when I had the 996, I wasn't looking for better driving experience. I was just trying to boost the shit out of it and see how much power I can make. But with the 993, I'm all about it. I'm just after experience. So yeah, that would be my first vote, is change the shifter out. It's not a lot of money, a couple $100 US dollars, but that was kind of one of my first mods when I had the 996.
Okay, so shifter. That's the first thing you do. Okay. Right. For me, this is going to be controversial. This is sensible me, by the way. I would get some after, you know, some intense driver tuition, because with that you're going to feel like you can control your car better. If anything I can take away from owning a 911 for the first time, and the first time I've had an engine way at the back and rear wheel drive, is I wish I had more confidence in it, because the confidence that I have now is far greater than what I did when I bought it in September. But if anything, if you have tuition to help you understand how to get the most out of your car, that could be perhaps the greatest performance mod ever, because the chances are you're not pushing it like you feel you are. You're not pushing it to like 7 or 8 tenths. You're probably only like 5 or 6 at the moment, which is fair enough if you're comfortable with that. But you buy a performance car, it's a bit like the whole diving watch mentality. I've got a couple of Tudors, and I can't swim.
I got my Submariner on, but I can't swim.
Yeah, exactly. You see, so it's kind of embarrassing that. But you know, I think investing some good money on advanced driver tuition, I think, will stand you in really good stead. But the unsensible person in me would be, well, it's still sensible. I'd probably change tires first.
What kind of tires you got on the 996?
I got Michelin Pilot Sport 4s at the moment.
Oh, so the new ones.
Yeah, they're brilliant. Cool. I mean, that thing cannot be unstuck. It's hilarious. That's probably why it makes me feel quite comfortable and confident in it already. But I will look to change them when I change the wheels. I'm not going to say what I'm going to get yet.
Change the wheels. I was waiting. I was like, when is I know that you always put wheels on your cars, so you're gonna have to. Is that something you're doing soon? Once the weather gets better?
Don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Stay tuned, indeed.
Stay tuned.
Okay, next question. There was loads of statements. Yeah, we've seen about you trying to have a midlife crisis. They were wondering what's the third pedal. Okay, yeah, we were talking about. Here we go. Your favorite Group C or IMSA car? I've got an answer for this.
Group C is my favorite era of racing.
Yeah.
And it's because there's so many cars that I love. There's two that I particularly gravitate to, that I'm just fascinated with. One is the Jaguar XJR9, or any kind of era of Jaguar in that lineage. That the silk cut, and the Castrol from IMSA, and then the it's pretty typical, right? 956 Porsche 956 and 962, right? Like I have a special affinity to those two types of Group C cars. But then I have to say, after that, it's a toss-up, right? It's the Sauber C9, C11. You got the Peugeot. You've got a bunch of really amazing cars after that. The Toyota Eagle from IMSA. But 956, 962, and Jag silk cut, probably my favorite. What about you, man?
I was going to say 962 for me. You know, it held the record for Nürburgring for so long as well. That thing was
I know.
far ahead of its time. When you consider, you know, this is a car that was developed in the 80s, and how potent that thing must have been, you know, to actually send it round in, what was the time? It was like mid 6s, wasn't it? You know, 620. Yeah,
like six. I don't know if it was 620 something, but it was 6.
It was something. Yeah. It was something mental. Anyway, so there's that. And for IMSA, I would probably say the Audis in the late 90s, when they ran out of what can we do with all these Group B engines. Let's stick it in a 90 and see how it goes. And pissing. It was a pissing contest with everyone's like taking the mick out of them driving in limousines. And then I don't know if you saw on the cars, they had, do you remember that? back in the day in the 80s, I don't know if anyone else remembers this, but it was an era where you could stick things in your car with suction cups. My mum had a Garfield on her
like a sign on the window kind of thing.
It was an actual, sometimes a sign, but they had this one, right? And it was a guy, he was stuck on the rear window, on the inside of the rear window, and he pressed a little sort of pneumatic pump or something, and he would pull his trousers down. And they had this on the IMSA cars, the Audis. So every time they were in front, they were just pressing this wildly at people behind them, pissing them off. And I think
Did they really do that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that, man.
That kind of
look that shit up.
Oh, it's brilliant. That level of shithousery was just mild. I love that. You know, that they could take the mick because no one thought they were going to do well. They're in a saloon, a really weighty car compared to like the Mercuries and everything else that was racing at the time, but it smashed them again and again. Didn't they get banned as well? I think.
Yeah, I think eventually the last iteration of that Audi got banned because they have too much power, right? In the motor. And then I love that era racing, the RX-7s, the Mercuries, like you said, the Celicas, because it was here in the United States, it was happening here, so it was always on TV. So versus Formula One wasn't always on TV here in the United States, or at least I didn't see it as often when I was growing up. So yeah, man, that Audi, I was fortunate enough to see one of them at Rennsport.
Yeah.
Rennsport? No, Monterey Historics. Last September, October.
That must have been amazing.
Yeah, it was cool to see, man. It's just one day, man, I hope to own a race car with some level of provenance that I could just kind of stare at, have in my garage or collection. That's the dream. But yeah, IMSA. Cool. IMSA all the way, dude.
IMSA, I hear you. Apex Dreamcast says Stefan Beloff ring time was 6:25. So I was kind of close to the money. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. It's the Rain Man in me. You throw matches on the floor, and I'll tell you to pick them up. But yeah. Anyway, last question again from Apex. Your number one favorite livery from the 80s and 90s, any series?
Oh God!
I've got a
Why does he ask such hard questions, Chad? Stop asking the hard questions, dude. God, man.
I've got a feeling of we've got the same one.
Well, let's. Should we start with, because there's a favorite livery from different series, right? Different. Okay. So for me, I'll start with Indy, because Indy, we haven't talked about Indy at all.
Oh no.
Indy 500. I know it's not as big anywhere else in the world as it is here in the United States, but it was for a long time when I was young. It was the pinnacle of racing in the United States, right? So we only had a couple of Formula One races in the United States during that period of time. We had the Detroit Grand Prix. We had the Phoenix Grand Prix, which is actually not too far away from my house where they were racing, downtown Phoenix. And then obviously COTA. And I'm missing one more, but so from an Indy perspective, my favorite Indy 500 Indy driver was always Mario Andretti.
Okay,
So, and just driver period in general, right? He's one of my favorite drivers. So the cars that he drove in Indy, the Valvoline car, the Kmart livery, that comes to mind. In IMSA, I'm particular to the Toyota simple livery of the Toyota Eagle.
Yep.
Not that, or the Castrol, the green Castrol that was on the Jags.
Yep.
For Formula One, fuck. It's so typical to say Marlboro livery, right? Because everybody loves that. And
but it's the easy pick, man. What are you talking about? It's easy. It's white. It's red. It's perfect.
But and then the John Player, right? That's obviously really, really iconic.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. But I wouldn't say those two, because I know that there's a lot of love behind those two liveries. You'll have to come back to me on the Formula One.
Okay.
Which one I love the most?
That's fun.
But Yeah, but those are the other ones that I would say are quite. And then from Le Mans, we haven't talked about Le Mans either.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And so for me, for Le Mans, like in the era of the 80s and 90s, maybe the early 90s, the GT1 98 livery Porsche.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that one
gosh.
I love. I'm not particular to a lot of the McLaren F1 liveries, like the Harrods and the Ueno Clinic. I did like the Finna McLaren livery on the GTR Longtail.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are probably ones that stick out to me as the liveries that I like from that era of racing in Le Mans.
Okay.
What about you, man? What do you pick as your top?
I'm boring with him, so it's going to be the Audi Sport Colors. I think there's not many colors that are as iconic on German race cars, and that's definitely one. My IndyCar knowledge is pretty pish, really. I'm going to be honest with you. The one that comes to mind, Penske. Is it Penske? They do a Penske yellow livery. It's yellow livery.
Penske,
yeah. I dig that. Formula One is going to be Marlboro. Like my absolute. Growing up, I was fortunate, but not aware that I was so close to McLaren growing up. I grew up in a little town called Weybridge. And
cool,
Woking
man.
was literally like 2 towns away. I went to college there. I did everything there. Woking was life. At that point, when I was older, going like college or what you call high school, like senior years, I was that close to McLaren. We got to see them rip up the actual main roads when they won. In '98, so you saw Mika Häkkinen and David Coulthard and stuff there, which was very cool. So yeah, for me, McLaren, Marlboro. Before I think about Le Mans, it's tough. The one that stands out, and for me, I love it, and I'm not normally one for garish colours or mad designs, but the 787B. That is just wicked. Sometimes you get road cars with liveries that are taken directly from racing. And Mazda in the UK, I don't know if you got it over in America. I know you had the Miata, but I don't know if you had the special BRM. Not BRM. Oh, bloody hell, what was it called? I forgot the name of the brand now.
Is it Mazda, you said?
It was a Mazda MX-5, or what you call a Miata.
MX-5. Yeah, we had an MX-5.
Yeah, you'd had, but I don't know if you had the car that came with the color scheme from the 787B, and it was literally directly lifted from it.
No.
And it had a turbo as well built onto it. I think it was based on the 1.6 rather than the 1.8 as well. Mazda Speed, yeah. It's Chad, isn't it?
Mazda Speed. Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was cool, man. I would be comfortable rocking that car.
Are you serious? They came out with that car out there with these colors from the factory?
Yeah, with a turbo. Yeah, bolted on turbo. It was like producing like 200 horsepower. And everyone knows how good and potent that car was.
Holy cow.
It's wicked, man.
No, good pick, man. Yeah, the 780s, the renowned 787B Le Mans livery. I haven't done anything with that yet because I know how people are itching for something. They've been asking me to do something with that. So it's coming. It's just I haven't gotten around to it, but it's so iconic.
It is iconic.
So iconic. Yeah.
And I've got one more race series to add to that. British touring cars, and I would say James Thompson's Accord from '97, the '97 BGCC year, because A, it was Honda, and B, it was the year that they officially released the Integra Type R in the UK.
Yeah.
So it was white, and you had the red Honda, and it was clean, man. That car was just phenomenal as well. So we could probably spend a lot of time talking about a lot of different series, but BTCC and DTM, for me at least, it's some of the most exciting racing you can watch, right? Because of how
comparable all the cars were and how competitive it was always it's just a lot of fun to watch. One of my favorites is Ricard Riedel's 850 Volvo Turbo Brick.
Yes. Proper.
And so I'm particular to the Volvos. I don't know why in that series. Obviously, Klaus Ludwig and the Evo 2s. I mean, all of that stuff is still, I love that stuff. I'm a big fan of the Evo 2, but the Hondas that you described, that you mentioned, just as cool to me.
Yeah.
To watch that era. But yeah, man, BTCC, DTM, all that stuff, love it.
You're fortunate. You got a lot of things you can pull from to make some wicked clothing. So I'm excited at what's coming next with Last Era, man. So
yeah, I try. You know what? People, you could just take a logo and you could put it on a T-shirt and say, okay, here's something that most people will like. But I try not to do just that literal translation, if you will, of something. I try to change it up a little bit. So these there's so much that I can take inspiration from, to your point.
Sure.
And excited to continue to do that for everybody.
Cool. And we're excited to see more, and I'm happy to spend more of my money on that stuff, man, because it's sick. Just make some stuff in red. That's all I'm asking. I want more red. Just give me more red.
I had some red stuff, and then people were kind of like, but for you, Guards Red, for sure. Some Ferrari stuff.
I wouldn't go into the Ferrari stuff for me. I'm pure. I'm pure Porsche. I like my cars to work.
I have a Guards Red Porsche, but it's not as fun to drive.
Yes, look at that. Okay, I'm just gonna go through some people coming up. Some wicked. Everyone loves the JPS there. Bure Valley, Ollie. Hello, mate.
Benetton. I forgot to mention Benetton. The Benetton livery from Michael Schumacher.
Yes,
that's one of my favorites that doesn't get enough love and attention. So I'll be doing something with that for sure.
That's cool. That's some really nice, proper 90s colors there. Golf livery. I mean, iconic, classic. Yep. It's incredible. Martini racing. Yeah. I always think, whenever I think of Martini, I always think of Jazz, the Transformer from G1. Yeah. So
I know that Drew Cool Collective did a lean custom pen.
Yeah.
You got one of those?
Of course, man. It's Jazz.
Yeah, no, I know.
It was my first Transformer.
I missed out on it. I'm gonna have to hit him up. I don't think he's gonna come out with that again. So it's funny, those pins that just on a tangent. Once they drop, there's like a huge culture behind it. So there's a lot of trading going on between people. Those little pins, and the stuff like the one that you have from Drew. Yeah, that shit is hard to find, man. Like
I know
that stuff is hard to find.
I'm well chuffed, man. I'm not taking that off the card. It's got the arc. In the base of the volcano, and B, it's just that thing's classic, man. I'm a Transformers boy through and through, so I grew up loving it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you like that stuff, we'll have a new collaboration with Lean Customs in May. We're dropping Formula One cars, 3 of them. It's going to be like a set, so it'll be like a champion series where we'll have 3 iconic Lean custom pins. Based on the late 80s and 90s Formula One champions. So stay tuned for that. That's coming in May.
Yeah, thank you for making me spend more money than I need to, mate, but appreciate that. Okay, that's all the questions from there. Now, we've got my quick fire questions. So everybody, before I get Eric to answer these, remember, these are in jest, so please do not take this too seriously. But you cannot escape these questions, Eric. You have to give a definitive answer, and you have to live by your answer.
Oh gosh, I'm scared. I'm scared now. What do we got?
You have no reason to be scared, but
these are your questions that you came up with last night or today. Is this what I'm answering right now? Because I don't have a beverage like you in my hand. I got green tea in my hand.
Oh, see, you're better. You're doing better on it. What you can't see is this T-shirt's lovely and loose on top. But I need to get a few pounds around the midriff. But it comes from good cider. So if you want good cider, that's where you need to go for. Okay, so the questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go. Rapid fire.
First question. Best Porsche ever?
Best what?
Porsche ever?
Porsche GT1.
GT1. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Good
We have
man.
a cat in our backyard that lives in the backyard that we inherited when we bought the house. So we have a cat, but dogs, 100%.
Cool. That's the strangest. Okay, fair play. What would you drive if Porsche never made a car?
BMW.
Okay. Last song you listened to in your car?
Oh God, what was I haven't been in my car in like weeks. I haven't driven anywhere. I've been stuck in the freaking house.
Oh man.
Oh God. What was the last song I listened to in the car? Oh gosh, this is a tough one, Sean. I'm gonna have to dig back. So I've been listening to. It's either probably. People are gonna crucify me for this. Justin Bieber. My daughter's like, Dad, you have Bieber fever, ha ha ha. I had that when I was like 5 years ago when I was 10.
Oh man, I need to move on now because that's brilliant.
Yeah, move on.
Best Porsche color?
Oh, excluding paint to sample or any color?
Any color.
Maritime blue or speed yellow?
Speed yellow, I'll give you that. Highway or canyon?
Canyon, 100%.
Porsche they never should have made.
Oh, you're gonna make me insult some people.
Yeah.
The first reaction to that question, no offense to anybody, because I've never owned one. I know people love them, so that's the caveat. Is the Boxster. But if you look at the history of Porsche in that era, the 996 and the Boxster were critical cars for Porsche during a very, very difficult economic time that they were having. So you can't. It's hard to say Boxster and 996 because without those two cars, Porsche may never made it to the waterfront era, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I hope you can live with yourself after that.
sorry.
This one you're going to love as
Sorry,
well.
buddy.
Schumacher or Senna?
Oh shit. This is the thing between that debate. I'll say Senna off the bat, but this is the thing about that debate. Because the debate is it also, you got to say Hamilton, Schumacher, that's also cool, this debate as well. But six-time world champion. Six-time world champion. Benetton, Ferrari, did it in different cars. A lot of people don't remember the kind of crazy shit Schumacher did during his era.
Yeah.
Right? The type of racing he put out there
was just vicious. He was a horrible man.
And some people will say he was dirty a lot of the time, right? But, that's Formula One back then. That's what you had to do to win. Senna, same shit with Prost and everybody else. I mean, he was just, he was a maniac on the track. And so
his focus was just
from a skill, pure talent perspective, I would say Senna. Yeah. From a consistency and just pure determination and doing it across multiple teams, right? Schumacher did that, right? Because he had a longer career, obviously, than Senna did. But I mean, to do it in multiple, his Benetton years and then his Ferrari years. I don't know. What do you think? What did you enjoy more?
Are you asking me my own question that you need me to answer? Oh, that's a challenge. Schumacher. I'll put it out there. Technically, he was a winner. He may not have had unless it was in the wet, he didn't have, he probably wasn't as beautiful a driver as Senna. But the way he can make a car dance in the wet was second to none. I agreed, just like Senna as well, but there was something about Schumacher. His determination, is willing to do anything he could to get where he wanted. For me, Schumacher was the package, and he was unstoppable. I mean, if Hamilton can match him, great. However, Schumacher for me is the greatest. So, which is, I know it's probably broad saying it because Senna's Senna and he's a godlike, but he was challenged a number of times, and maybe if he lived longer, who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? I mean, if you look at like boxing as a different sport similar to that, and say, okay, well, if someone like Muhammad Ali is like Senna, and someone like Floyd Mayweather is like Schumacher, right? Who do you pick as the greatest of all time, right? Like, so it's different. It's hard to compare eras. I guess that's my point.
Thank you very much for coming back. Thank you all. Pretty much all there. Connecting. We have been on for an hour.
I was like, is it only like an hour time limit or something on Instagram?
I think so,
Live?
yeah. I planned this to be half an hour, and this is what happened. So
oh, man.
I need to go back into my my planning stage. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is good. We've got 5 more questions. Okay.
5 more.
5 more. Okay, so let's move on. How could they improve the current 911?
God, I would love a 911. You know, these 911s that come out that are kind of like the pure versions of like the 911R or the GT3 Touring or whatever. I think the more manual transmission options in some of the newer 911s, just having always a manual transmission option in all of the new 911s, that would be awesome. Even though I think they do it sort of with like kind of limited edition, but then you don't want to, only certain people can attain those types of cars, right? So just continue to make a manual option. Right. Cool. Especially as we move to electric, you got to have a manual option somewhere.
How it would work is beyond me. You know, you basically kind of going, yeah, it's manual. I've moved it forward. Yeah, it's manual. I've moved it backwards.
Oh, man. It'll be interesting to see the economics behind Porsche's decisions going forward with PDK and then now electrifying all of the models. Like, it's going to be really interesting, man.
Cool. It definitely will be. Okay. Favorite drink?
Scotch. In particular, right now, what I'm drinking that I love and I've been drinking and it's kind of my favorite is Lagavulin 16. Neat.
Okay. Not tried it, but I'll give it a try.
Give it a shot, man.
I will.
Do it. Next time we'll switch, and I'll have the nighttime kind of Instagram live, and you'll be in the morning, so at least I can have a drink.
I'm fine with my morning coffee. You know, there you go. Favorite modified Porsche other than your own?
Oh, like somebody's personal car?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Oh man. I'm a lot of the cars that I see are on the West Coast, right? So,
of course.
So there are probably 2 or 3, and I'll kind of skirt the question a little bit because I'll say there's like the outlaw stuff, which I absolutely truly love that type of build style, and then there's just kind of like the tuner, regular modified, and then there's kind of the motorsport stuff, right? There is a car that was built by a gentleman. He used to live on the East Coast. He lives on the West Coast now. It's a tribute car, a lot like mine, but it was a complete tribute car where they took a 993 and he basically put all of the RS bits, the real RS bits on it. The glass, deleted the sunroof, got the right seats, have all the right suspension parts, have all the right kind of pieces and componentry from a 993 RS, and he essentially built his own 993 RS, and that's one car that inspired my build, actually, because it was done so precisely and to a level of detail that you wouldn't be able to tell. Like if you came up to it and you looked at it, you would not be able to tell that it was a tribute car because it looks exactly like a 993 RS. And for someone like me who can't afford a 993 RS, I appreciate that kind of. Yeah, I appreciate that kind of. Yeah. Outlaw cars, there are a whole bunch of really cool outlaw cars. The one in particular that I've seen up close is the green. I don't know if it's an outlaw car, but Ryan Hogan, I think Ibach, the green 911.
That thing is phenomenal. Very JDM. And it's
very JDM. Got the black wheels, nut and bolt restoration. The story that that was kind of chronicled in Cool Collective's videos or blogs, and then I saw it at Luft 6.
Yeah,
that thing is wild, man. And so that's you have to appreciate that level of kind of passion in modifying, right? So,
yeah.
So that would be my second. Those are two probably some of my favorite ones. So that kind of crosses over into JDM Outlaw. But yeah, those would be the two.
I think they're two pretty good ones there. So well done. Chinese takeaway or Italian takeaway?
We don't have good either here in Phoenix. So we do a lot of home cooking, but there is an Italian restaurant, Italian takeaway 100%.
Italian takeaway 100%.
Italian
Okay.
takeaway. We eat a lot of Asian food.
Ah, of course. And lastly, favorite film with a Porsche in it?
Commando. Schwarzenegger.
Ah, yeah.
Is it 1983 or 84 where Simi was driving in the canyon in his yellow 911 Targa. He pulls him over and he hangs him over the side of the cliff.
I told you I'd kill you last. I lied.
I knew you were gonna do it. Dude, you do the best
It was brilliant.
impression, man. I love it. Do you remember that scene? You remember that
Of course
movie,
I did,
right?
man. That was the guy who threw off. Was the guy who had
Semi,
the
yeah.
glass bottles in Warriors. Warriors come out to play. Yeah. I like films, man. I like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's a legend. What happened to him? I let him go.
Matrix.
Yes.
Here's the other reason why I do it is so last era, because he just popped in, but it gives me an opportunity to do things. This is Sean. Say hi to Sean and everybody on Instagram. This is Eli.
Hi, nice to see you.
It gives me the opportunity to do something with my kids that'll teach them maybe how to take an idea and turn it into something like a business. So
Well, to be fair,
Dad, can you put that thing on my bike?
well, he's come at the best time because we are wrapping up now. So that's the quickfire questions. I can't believe you said the Boxster was the car they never should have made, but that's fair
don't
enough.
repeat that. I know you're going to repeat that. You can keep repeating it.
I love these questions because I get to ask them. I don't get to have an opinion on them. So not my problem. Not my problem at all.
You know what?
Eric.
But never mind. I'd love to pick up a Boxster as a track car.
Okay. I love how you're trying to get your way back in
Redeem
with the fan base. Yeah, people know you're horrible now. So, no, Eric, I want to say thank you so much for being my first guest. We kind of overran a little bit, but it was, you have such an incredible story, and the way you look at things is wonderful. And I wish you the great success with Last Era moving forward, brother. So thank you so much.
You too, man. Just one thing. I appreciate the support from RennEleven. I appreciate the support from you, Sean. I'm a big follower, big supporter. I continue to be, and I really am grateful for just sharing the story and sharing this time with you. So I just want to acknowledge, it's about this kind of connection and community that we can build across, different areas of interest. And so because we overlap with motorsport and Porsche, I hope to continue to support you and the channel, and let me know how I can help. And I appreciate everything, man. Thank you.
And likewise as well, man. We are going to do a collab, and it's going to be something amazing. And you're going to want the merchandise. We'll remember that. So, thank you so much. No worries, Eric. We'll do that. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, brother.
Cheers, man.
All the best. And lastly, for everyone else, I just want to say thank you so much for being in my inaugural live chat. I am prepared to do more of these, actually, and I will be looking at some great people who are heavily involved within the Porsche scene in some shape, way, or form. Again, some interesting stories there, how people get involved. And the most important thing is, some of their stories, you may see elements that match your stories, match your backgrounds. there's such a great opportunity for people to get involved in the scene in any shape, way, or form. If there's anything I can, say close to my heart, if it wasn't for an idea I had for RennEleven, I wouldn't be doing this today. So there's opportunities. Again, thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking to you later on. Again, all the best. Much love to you all. Take care.